The World This Week. With me in the studio are Alon Pinkas and Barbara Opall-Rome. And straight to the Russian-American-Syrian affair. The state of affairs between Russia and the West is so bad that Russian Prime Minister Medvedev is invoking the Cold War.
The vast majority, in our opinion, of Russia's attacks have been against legitimate opposition groups.
In our opinion, NATO's view on Russia is non-friendly and factually isolated. You could say even more sharply, we have fallen into a new Cold War.
What is going on, Barbara?
It's been a new Cold War since the invasion of Crimea and the attempt by Russia to redraw the lines through use of force. And Syria is just bringing this in stark relief even more. The problem is that the United States and its European allies and NATO are virtually powerless. They have a lot of fancy words in all kinds of fancy places, Geneva and Vienna, and now in Munich, but actually it's the Russians. Maybe Alon will disagree with me on this, but it's the Russians that have the plan, the Russians that have the real skin in the game, and they are changing the facts on the ground. Just in 1 week, just to give you a comparison, despite all the hyperbole, in 1 week Russia has attacked 1,900 almost targets in Syria. What has the US-led coalition done?
Nothing.
16. So unless they want to actually put some actions behind these words, this is Putin's theater of operations.
And to think, Alon, that the Russians were practically invited by most of the states here in the Middle East, including Israel.
I don't think there's a Cold War. I think the Russians have a vested interest in Syria, which America does not. In fact, America couldn't care less about what's going on in Syria, so America doesn't stand to lose anything or compromise any of its interests. The Russians, on the other hand, need the naval base in Tartus, up in the north of Syria. They would love a small Alawite enclave, but in the meantime, what they are basically doing is enforcing or reinforcing rather Assad's regime and strengthening him, which, by the way, is not different from what America or Israel had hoped to achieve. So I think there are no losers here. And well, obviously, the Syrian murder, those who were murdered in Syria, those who were butchered, and the refugees. But in terms of the geopolitics, no one is losing here.
Okay, let's talk some campaign in American politics. The death of Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia, a remarkable conservative. Is this alone the next war in Washington? Will Obama nominate somebody, and what's going to happen?
I think he's 100% going to nominate someone.
And he's 100% going to be blocked by Senate?
Not necessarily. The Senate will look very bad blocking a nominee who is middle-of-the-road centrist. Look, there are two important things here. A, there's no real precedent for a president not appointing someone when he has almost an entire year in the White House. There's no constitutional precedent for this. What the Republicans are trying to do is to say, well, we need to see how the 2016 elections
right. They're saying this already.
Exactly, transpire before. But Obama will most definitely submit the nominee to the Senate. I would not be surprised if the nominee is actually approved. But the most important thing, last sentence, the most important thing is traditionally, historically, those who were appointed as conservatives to the Supreme Court tend to be much more liberal than those who appointed them think they were, and those who were appointed as staunch liberals tend to be more centrist and conservative.
Justice Anthony Kennedy is a case in point, who was appointed by Ronald Reagan, by the way, in the last year of office, in the height of a presidential election, when his first choice was rejected by the Democratic-controlled Senate at the time.
Let's watch part of the debate last night.
Obviously, the war in Iraq was a big, fat mistake, all right? Now, you can take it any way you want, and it took It took Jeb Bush, if you remember at the beginning of his announcement, when he announced for president, took him 5 days. He went back. It was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. Took him 5 days before his people told him what to say. And he ultimately...
Well, actually, Jeb Bush replied and was more or less perceived as a winner in this debate.
You know, one thing about the passing of Justice Scalia is that it could actually have an impact on the Trump and the Sanders candidacy, because there are such heavy issues on the agenda, whether it's abortion or gun control or affirmative action or immigration, and the Republican mainstream or the Democratic mainstream may wake up. It may take the wind out of the sails of these renegade anti-establishment candidates. They'll put their anger in check and rally if it's...
We'll see about that. Briefly, Alon.
Look, on the one hand, Donald Trump said things that many Americans believe in, and not one Democrat would even dare to say
like
right
the Iraq
now.
War.
On the other hand, he was extremely unfair to George W. Bush. I mean, all the criticism against Bush on the Iraq War is fair and valid, but he said things. He said that he is responsible for 9/11, which clearly he is not, and that he knowingly and consciously used selective intelligence in order to justify an invasion of Iraq, which is not the case. It was perhaps a stupid move. It was perhaps a big fat mistake, to quote Trump, but I don't think it was intentional.
But when Trump says it, somehow it becomes a theme in the campaign.
But we all agree that Jeb Bush is not dead yet.
No, not at all. Thank you very much, Alon and Barbara.
Thank you.